our lectures, allow me to briefly present our house rules to ensure a smooth and productive session for everyone. First is please keep your microphones muted throughout the session to avoid background noise unless you will be called by the speaker or moderator. Second, if you have questions during the talk, please type them in the chat box. Third, all questions will be addressed during the question and answer portion after both speakers have completed their presentations. And lastly, please observe proper decorum and respect throughout the session. Now, without further ado, we now move on to the first part of our lecture series. Our first topic is about principal component analysis. It introduces a method that allows researchers to simplify complex data while preserving its most important information, an essential skill in today's data-driven research environment. Our speaker is a dedicated professional and researcher in the field. And we are also proud to share that he has recently passed the professional mechanical engineer, a remarkable milestone that reflects his expertise, commitment, and excellence in his profession. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Engineer Randy K. Salazar. Sir?
Hello, good morning. Sorry. Di ako karon sa shop doon muna. Ako lang sa gipa. Ako lang sa ikon kay shop ko. Madungog ba? Kada mo background. Okay, pero akong sound.
Yes, sir.
Sige. Wala i-ask siya, no? Wala kayo i-ask?
Wala na, sir.
Sige. I'll share my screen. Ako nang i-present ng akong pan.
Sige, sir.
Okay, good morning everyone. Kita ra akong screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sige. Nya ang akong sound okay ra sir?
Yes.
Siya, just to check, madungog pang background noise na ko dire?
Hindi na, sir.
Okay. Katong sa kay ga-cutting mga siya niya, suting sound. Sige, I will start. What I will be talking to you today about will be principal component analysis. My first encounter with this topic is still a long time ago with Dr. Padua when he asked us to make some studies with respect to government activities, etc. No? I remember we used this to make the corruption index studies sa patuylayan ng mga kwan. Most often, what we did with the principal component analysis or principal component data is we use them for index numbers, no? Or scores of a certain activity. Today, I would like to show you how it works, what is PCA, and then later on, I would also like to show you how it works in the statistical tools like Jamovi and JAS.
And then,
I will not be putting on my video just to conserve the kanang bandwidth na to. So I will start. So this is what we are going to have today. Outline would be the first one is what is PCA. How does PCA of principal component analysis work? The mathematical side and the statistical side, and what it is used for. And then we have common terms like the term method of rotations. No? I will also be including that in the explanation. The sampling requirements, the data requirements for you to be able to use it properly. And then the key differences between PCA, FA, EFA, and CFA. And what would be the possible research goals that you can make out of using PCA. Okay, I'll start. Okay, sa ako sa ning i-move ning kuan sa asa gani siya balhin. Yeah, it's okay. Okay, so what is principal component analysis? No? It's a mathematical transformation that creates new variables or component that maximize variance. So you may ask, also ng variance, is it the same as the usual variance that we talk about are differences? Mana mo study tag variance, but in this case, we are talking about variance as the spread of data, the amount of distance between the data. It is a method of dimensionality reduction. When we talk about reduction, we do not mean that we're going to remove data or variables. Instead, there are what we call collinear and correlated data. All of these will be grouped together into a single set or one set. And what we need to do is, or what the software will do is draw a line to the middle of the data and correlate it with the main line of the principal component. How it's going to affect the principal component we said. So the directed line that aligns with the majority direction of the cloud is the best fit principal component. That will be much clearer later on when I give you some example. The other aspect is that the length of this directed line represents the magnitude of its loading. Muna yung effect, yung weight sa imong principal component, and then the direction is the measure of the relationship, meaning if they go the same way, like for example in this, let me check, can I have some? Makita ra akong cursor sa screen. Nakita ko kung Andre pointer. Hindi ko sure mo ba yung pointer. Ayan, this laser pointer. Yeah, if you notice this one, you notice you have several clouds of data or group of data. And the alignment of this data are all vertical. So most likely the correlation na niya is on PC2. If I'm going to draw a principal line or a line axis vertically, then these are all something like correlated to the vertical line. So this is what we mean by your direction. The spread is the oval spread is wider on the vertical and lesser on the width. Pero this is just one group of data. There are several other data that are actually grouped together. And we may be considering all the rest of the data. So the spread could be horizontal or vertical. Okay? So this is what is meant by the variation and your direction. Although there is a very large, big concern about PCA, PCA cannot be claimed as a latent factor because we are not actually dealing with the latent factor in this case. Later on, we could also see how the PCA is actually used in relation to the other factor analysis and other things. So the principal component is a weighted sum of the variable. That's why a while ago I mentioned that this can be used as an index, like human development index. It's not actually a new variable, but it's a new concept, but it is the representation of a certain condition, like how educated you are. That's part of your being human or your human development. What PCA do is it assign a weight to each variable that contributes to the overall pattern. Like for example, the spread of your data here, you have this kind of naka-oblique, no? And this data will actually have a weight on, let's say, PCA1, na siya weight nga ihatag. The software automatically, or should we say, calculates this weight and assign the weight for each of these set of variables or data. Example, here is the mathematical equation for the PC principal component. Let's say 1. The W1 is your weight 1 for the set of variable of Y1 or Y1 set variables. This could be another set of variables and it has given weight of weight 2. the calculation is done internally by the software or whatever the algorithm that is used in the PCA. So in the end, it is actually a summary score of cluster of variables. Y1 is a cluster, Y2 is another cluster, Yn is a certain cluster that is in the series of your data involved. So a principal component represents the dominant pattern of variation that actually exists in your real-world data. In fact, the dominant variable becomes the factor that tells you about what your PC is about. No? So kung saan ang variable ang pinaka-dominant, mo ay almost basically the name of your principal component. It tells when this pattern changes and how many measured variables tend to change together. The correlationship between the principal component that you have and the main variables that are actually affecting your component. These are some sample uses of PCA, especially in the financial or accounting, portfolio risk management. PCA is used to decompose the complex market relationship into the fundamental risk drivers. The main pieces often allow managers to isolate systematically. Actually, you can identify this risk factor such as general market movements and interest rate changes. So that could be one of your risk factors sa imong portfolio. And using PCA will tell you how this kind of factors affects your financial portfolio. Some other example are these ones. I only try to check on what is related to the audience today. There are also the socioeconomic status what indices. This is also can be used in machine learning. Machine learning deals with a lot of data, and the faster way of trying to reduce the amount of information is you use the PCA. You group a set of data that are correlated, have the same pattern, and instead of dealing with, say, 10 variables, now you're dealing with only one variable that is the representation of all these other variables that goes together with the same relationship. Some other factor is noise filtering that's in the field of engineering, and then feature extraction, image processing in video and machine learning. Here are some items that good example for portfolio risk management. I think the audience will be very much familiar with this. No, the return of asset, return of what's ang ganing E, and then net profit margin, current ratio, quick ratio, cash ratio. All of these are actually the dominant, the variables that are used to study the portfolio risk management. However, in the process of doing the principal component analysis, you have PC1. Ang pinaka-dominant niyang variable is the ROA, ROE, and the net profit margin. For the PC2, you have the current ratio, quick ratio, cash ratio. These are your dominant variables for PC2. And debt to equity and debt to assets is the PC3 dominant variables. By the way, just to give you an information, principal component analysis does not automatically give you an interpretation. It will only tell you that PC1 is composed of. It does not mean that it does not tell you that this composition is operating efficiency. What is needed actually is that if I have PC1 as ROA, ROE, net profit margin, you will need someone who is an expert of the topic to tell you how do I interpret my PC1. Operating efficiency is not a latent variable, cannot be claimed as a construct or abstract or a concept. Instead, it is a measure of your ROA, ROE, and net profit margin. And who will tell you that this is money operating efficiency? Who will tell you that? Most likely, you students who are studying on financial management, or your advisor who is the expert of the topic. Here is the basic interpretation, the qualitative or the description of this operating efficiency. Measures how effectively the firm generates profit from its asset and sales. If you are familiar with the subject of in this one, what is the measure of ROA? What is it used for? So in this case, this may be the correct interpretation of this. Ang tawag niya interpretive label. So instead of assigning a construct or abstract or concept in PCA, you do not assign those things. Instead, you make an interpretive label. So I would call this operating efficiency. And if I'm talking about the measure of current ratio, quick ratio, and cash ratio, it may be termed as short-term solvency. I don't know if the audience kanina sa accounting would agree if this is the exact term to be used for this group of data. What happened during the analysis is that this group of information are aligned, or ang ilahang alignment is being assigned to PC2 as the group that goes together and tell you something about what you are studying. And for debt to equity and debt to assets, the interpretive label is capital structure, meaning to say this is how the firm relies on delivering its own internal funding, how it can. I would not say that I am very good with the financial accounting, but I would like to hear from those who have studied this if this is exactly what it means, no? For all the rest of the other samples here, you have asset location, allocation, and diversification. These are some of the common items that groups together PC1, PC2, and PC3. And these are your qualitative or your descriptive interpretation of your label to your PC1. Example for the macroeconomic financial stress index, you have the volatility index in the TAD spread. It's being termed as market fear. No? It captures the general panic or uncertainty in the equity and the interbank markets. Meaning to say the higher this index goes up or goes down, it also affects your PC1. And most likely the realistic effect to the market is this one, this third column. Here is an example of the socio-economic status and wealth indices. The question is, if you own a TV, does it make you wealthy? Not necessarily. A radio does not tell that you're wealthy, but if you have a car, and if you have a refrigerator, and if you own all of these in your household, then it tells something that you may be well off. No? Your household may have a good accumulation of appliances, which you can afford. And what does it tell you? It says that your household is well off. Kung dungagan pa ninyo yung washing machine, dishwasher, microwave, dato nagit siguro ka, no? It's also a very good example of the idea of a variable and indicators. Owning a radio does not mean I am rich, but it's an indicator that I can afford to buy a radio. Owning a car may be, mahal-mahal man yung car, it may tell you that you are well off because it's expensive to buy a car. But this does not mean immediately that you're also rich, no? So it's a relationship between a variable and indicator. This is what I see PC principal component analysis. No? This is what it tries to do. How does we have an idea of the household wealth as your interpretive label? Again, it depends on how you are going to look at this factor on the dominant variables that you have. No? Na ako dere, kung ang imo kunong sa floor material sa imong balay is cemented, dili dirt, I think you have I'm trying to focus on this because it will give you an idea of how the differentiation is going to be done. Now, if you go back to the previous examples, again, you need to check on your expertise on what does it tell you if I have the following indicators. So in here, it's interpreted as infrastructure access. And then education, head of household, literacy rates, the human capital. And in fact, this topic on education, your living condition, and your literacy is the number one indicator of the human development index of a country. How many are educated and literate? How many are actually having a healthy lifestyle? Maka-eat several times a day. And I mentioned about human development index as an indicator because that is one of the output of a PCA. No? Usa na siya sa na-generate na itong idea. Sir, can I make my own index? Yes, you can. Depending on the data that you have and depending on the sources of information and how it is relatably can be said, these are indicators of the following index that I will make. In this case, you are cautioned to, before you can say that it is the index, you are cautioned to really look into the validity of your claims. It really needs, no? If you would like to have an index on economics, then you must have someone who is an expert on the economics. Because, again, this information cannot be generated, dili ni sila automatic na ma-generate. You have to do it yourself, no? Kamoy mo buhatan. Even the description, kamoy mo explain. Depends on how much knowledge you have on the subject. Wait sa murag nioro man akong screen. Sa inyo diyan, i-change akong screen, wala? Wala, sir. Ako sang i-off ka dito. I don't know why ni frozen ang akong screen. Ala, dili na mo respond akong laptop. Kaya yung gibuhat. Wait. Wala na gininihaw. Di na siya mo respond. Where's my person? Wait, sa hanap yung technical difficulties. I'm not sure why my laptop is not responding. Feeling na ko mo na effect sa pag-update to Windows 11. Mukha gina yung updates nila eh. My mouse is on but my cursor is not responding. Di mo sugot. And my touch pad dili sa mo sugot. Okay, di mo sugot. I might be removing my gyapon mo sugot. Hala oy. Kasada ng bata. siya. I may have to restart my laptop siguro. Siya.
Yes, sir.
Murag ni hang di siya mo.
Nihang yung...
Ako labis late yung kanila kumputa.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I mean, maybe off for a while kadit lang. Tapos pasan na ako.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, my apologies for the technical issues we are experiencing right now. So let's have a 5-minute water breaks. For those who wants to go to the comfort rooms, you may go. And then we are still asking for our second speaker if it's already here. Okay, if not, we will proceed with him if wala pa si Sir Randy. Okay, so let's be back by 9:46. Thank you.
Hello, good morning again. Nakabalik na.
Okay, Sir Randy is already back.
Sorry kayo ha. I think this is the effect of upgrading your 10 to 11. Yeah, I did not know ang akong operating system i-upgrade na dig 11.
Okay.
And this is one of the common problem that Windows 11 have, no? I'm not sure why ang Microsoft mabugos gid ani nga ipa-change to 11. I'm going to share this screen again.
Okay, sir.
So I think we stop up to this point. So again, I'm saying a while ago that I don't know if you have encountered the idea of indicators and abstracts or concepts. Usually, ang concept dili na to ma-measure directly, like reach. You cannot measure reach, but there are indicators that you reach. No? Owning a car is one indicator. Sa pailain, having a large house may be an indicator. So you try to survey how many people do live in their own house na dagko, and how many have cars. Because it will tell you and it will give a telltale sign that this person may be rich. Again, you not simply assume because kasi nang iyang balay o ang iyang car is inutang, So it does not really tell you directly that there is reach. You need another data to tell you that. What happened to the PC or principal component, it will try to group together all this information for you to be able to give an interpretation if this PC is this kind of direction or that kind of direction. Now, in your own studies, you can do that. No? You can have a lot of this information. Marketing studies, for example, how does the marketing actually move forward, in what direction, and what are the telltale signs that this is the direction of these market strategies. And that group of information becomes your principal component. Mo na yung ipasabot gibuhat sa PCA. To move forward, under the PCA, physical principal component analysis, in the software you will find the following terms: Varimax, Quartimax, Oblimin. If you try to imagine your data cloud, katong ganina nga example nga nakoy data cloud, I think there's an example dire. Example, here is my original data and the dots are my data cloud. No? Yeah, I think I like the idea of the data cloud. Actually, it's not my term. When I try to read a lot of this information, they call this the data cloud. Your Y1 is one of your principal component. Y2 is one of your principal component. Y3 is another principal component. So there are three principal components on your screen karon, no? In this group of data information. The relationship between Y1, Y2, and Y3 is orthogonal. It means they are 90 degrees to each other. Data that are directed 90 degrees to each other cannot be called correlated. They are not correlated because they are running on different directions. But PCA will try to determine whether your data is moving on the Y1, it's moving in the direction of Y2, or moving in the direction of Y3, because in the end, you will interpret what is Y1. So oftentimes, the dominant variable that dictates the direction of Y1 becomes the interpretive label of your Y1. No? So this is what you have. This is the original data. This is the original axis. Now, sometimes when you place the axis, it does not really fit your data. You notice that the data is naka-diagonal. And yet, your Y1 is way off. Ingno na to, dili siya maximum ang positioning. The maximum would be, alita sa panbilay sa pointer. The maximum would be in that direction. Mo na itong maximum. But you see, Y1 is here. If this is the case, then your PCA analysis is not at its optimum. Dili siya insakto pagkabutang. That is why you go to your rotation, you either use Varimax, Oblimin, asa to ang notes dire. That's what's the meaning sa Varimax? Varimax is the that is supposed to be 90 degrees to each other, no? Kanang ang iyang positioning niya maximum, meaning you maximize the variation, the variance, the data spread imong maximum. You try to look for your principal component to match the maximum positioning of your data spread. So in this case, mugamit ka og rotation. Here now you have your new Z1 component, which actually is rotated to maximize the data spread. So Z1 is now on the spread of your data cloud nga naka-elliptical. Your Z2 is on the other side of your 90 degrees to Z1. So when you use Varimax, it's always 90 degrees with each other, and Z3 is 90 degrees to the plane of Z1 and Z2. So depending on how many dimensions will appear, this is how the principal component is being aligned. So you discard Y1, you change to Z1, Z2, and Z3. And when you normalize or you try to rotate this is how it looks like. Your Z1 covers the maximum variance of your data spread. Z2 has a minimal variance or minimal effect or coverage, and C3 is on this direction. So this is what is meant by rotating your axis using this type of operations. And in the end, you have your Z1 as your main principal component. It actually defines the whole of this by Z1. And you may find in your software na lagi po yung PC2, lagi po yung PC3. Those PCs are exactly aligned to the direction of C2 and C3. So those are the variables that gives a very good effect to your data set. What is the objective of rotating? To achieve a simple structure. A simple structure is defined as until every until every original variable loads heavily on one component. That's the basic simple structure that we would like to achieve. And you try to reduce or zero the other components, Z1, Z2, and C3. Again, the spread may not be achievable, or the idea may not be achievable, because you may have 3 components still. At least if you have 10 variables, now it's being reduced to 3 main components. And now you're dealing with fewer variables instead of dealing with 10 or more than 10. Rotating does not change your total variance because you are not changing your data structure. It also will not change the eigenvalues, the amount of variance information per PCA. And it will simply try to do a fitting. Asa nimo i-place ang imong usa ka principal component in such a way it gives you a very good interpretation to your data. Please raise some questions if there are things na medyo dili kay klaro ha. I may have my own mindset. I may be talking in my own way nga nakasabot ko, basta di mo kasabot sa akong gikuan. Here is a sample example of financial health data set. No? You have the ROA, net margin, current ratio, quick ratio, debt to equity, interest coverage. Sample lang siya. I'm not even sure if this is realistic enough. There are 10 data sets. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ka. 6 ka, what do you call this? Kanang variables. And this is the result when we do Jamovie. Quick ratio is ang basic kanang definition or description in the financial terms: liquidity, debt to equity, leverage, interest to coverage, solvency. This is how we define this data set, no? Ang atong mga variables. And this is what happens to the Varimax, pag i-Varimax na siya. And these are the set of data na come out, no? This is PC1. PC1 is heavily loaded with current ratio, quick ratio, interest coverage, not so much on the net margin and the ROA. Pero kaning tulo mo na siya nag-dominate, no? 0.8. PC2 is dominated by net margin, ROA. This one is negative, debt to equity, but negative. Dako siya data pero negative. So you may have to check how do you interpret the negative sign later on. And then PC3 is dominated by the biggest factors are net margin and ROA. So how do we interpret? So the interpretive labels: overall financial strength, leverage, performance, contrast, profitability, efficiency. Because what on PC3, what you have is the net margin and the ROA ang pinakadako nga panimo. So the first principle component reflects the overall financial strength direction characterized by the high liquidity, profitability, interest coverage, and lower leverage. The second, capital structure and operating performance separately on the following. No? And then the third, profitability, efficiency, direction, emphasizing return. So this is now your descriptive interpretation of your using what you have on the PC alignments. Kinsay mo buhat ani? Angka research. So dili ni siya automatic mo gawas. Sir, pwede gamit ang AI. Depende ninyo, no? Use it wisely. One ay pinaka-fastest karon gamit ang AI. So that was the example that I had. Medyo maglisod ko pangitag data kaya I don't have actually data sets on in this kind of topics. Okay, so what are the statistical requirements to run a PCA? The variable to sample ratio rule, you have 5:1. Minimum acceptable observations per variable, you have 5, no? Per variable. Acceptable. Ang good is 10:1. Sometimes, if you are going to look into, let's say, international global data, di makakitagdagan labi na considerate countries. Let's say, I would like to have an index on the ASEAN countries. Yeah, pagtanaw mo sa ASEAN countries, pila raman ta kabuo. So anyway, that's acceptable. Ang 10:1. 20:1 or more, very strong an idea. And here is the absolute cut-offs nga kanang strict to sa statistics. Sample size less than 50, weak and stable daw. If you have 50 to 100 marginal, 100 to 200 is acceptable. By the way, it depends on what you're dealing with. If you are trying to deal with social studies where you are going to have several people, then maybe the 100 to 200 is a very good measure, no? And if you're going to generalize a certain group of geographical location like Cebu City, langanin sa kayo mo 5:1 ra ka sa Cebu City. That's too short, no? You are trying to generalize kanang usa ka geographic location or city nga dako population. So you have to have more, no? For studies na example kanang mga financial studies, corporations. How many corporations can you get the data from? And then usually ang data makuha nimo sa corporations are very stringent or very solid. Whereas when you ask a person an interview, ang ilang information is very weak. Anong weak? Because these are all like personal opinions. But if you go to corporates, it's audited, meaning to say these are real numbers na gi-verify pagayo. So the degree of validity of your information is good. But if you're asking people around, the validity of the information may be very weak. So you need more people to ask if all people have the same idea. You may be looking into these two sa imong gamiton. If you're doing social studies, you may have to go down to the 100 to 200. And these are all some of the other information that you need to have. The Chemo, Kaiser, Meyer, Olken test. Before you go to, I'll show you in Jamovie and Ninya. Before you try to use your data, i-load na nimo sa Jamovie baron. It will tell you the KMO test. And you will find that there are some data set that does not pass. What do you mean by do not pass? When you have 0.6 acceptable daw. But if you are below this, di ba we have an idea we are reducing variables a while ago sa previous sets slides, no? When you say reducing variables, in PCA we are trying to put them together. But before PCA happens, you have to do a test. Testing sa imong data set. And if your data set shows that this kind of information, this line, does not have, is not acceptable, meaning according to KMO, you will have to remove them by hand. Kamoy mo tangtang nila, imo silang ipang-remove. Do not use this information, you use only the following information. According to KMO, you have to have 0.6 above, 7 and 8 excellent, 7 is good, 0.6 is not acceptable. Acceptable below that, you will have to remove it manually. So if you have 100 data set, yeah, you found out half of it is not acceptable, you will have to remove basically 50 ka data set. Leave only the good ones. And there is also the Bartlett's test of spheres. Sura sa lito ko na niya. Anyway, you have the significant value of p less than 0.05. No? I'm not sure if the data set that you have kung naabay degree of example. What I know is that for medical studies, you have a very stringent p-value. If you're doing social studies, okay ra ang taas-taas nga dili kayo. No? Imagine 0.001 and 0.05. That's a big difference with p-values. Wala ko kakita nga doon ay nag-mention na natin, but I know that whenever your study becomes very critical, the amount of p-value that is needed also goes up. Because I think it may be a matter of life and death in the study, may be harmful to other people. So if this fails, PCA is not justified regardless of sample size. Again, what you do is you remove some of this information that do not passes the KMO. You try to manually trim down your data. Again, PCA only makes sense if the variables are moderately correlated. Not all correlations are near zero, not perfectly collinear. So these are data sets that may not be useful, no? Sobra naka-collinear o dili kayo correlated. If everything is uncorrelated, there's nothing to compress. Wala siya mabuhat ng compression. Because PCA compresses only those correlated, moderately correlated data. You may ask, yeah, I'll proceed now. Now we talk about the key difference between PCA, FA, EFA, and CFA. So these are some important information for you. PCA is a data reduction technique that transforms observable into uncorrelated component, maximizes explain variance. What is the uncorrelated components? This is the 1, 2, 3, the 90 degree to each other. You divide your data into 3 sets of directions. No? Yeah. More na gamit sa PCA. You do not assume, you do not try to make some conceptual observations na, ay, kuan man siya. This is not for PCA. That is for your factor analysis. A model-based approach that explains observable manifestation of underlying latent factors. No? So, if you would like to do conceptual then you go for factor analysis. Do not use the PCA. PCA is only for interpretive. No? Or you go to AFA. This is exploratory factor analysis. And if you like to do theory development, you proceed to CFA. No? This is the tabulated. The main goal, data reduction, you use PCA. Latent variable modeling, use factor analysis, discover latent, EFA, exploratory discovery. No? And if you're going to test hypothesis, please go to CFA. The recommended hierarchical sequence and research can have something that you can defend, defensible workflow. You do first PCA, but not necessary, optional. You screen the variables, reduce the redundancy, check dimensionality. Whatever you have out of PCA can be proceeded to your FA, if you like, no? Then you can make your own conceptual conceptual allegations, added the claims there. Then CFA for the testing of your validity of your information. Research goal, if your research goal is data reduction, yes, do PCA. Index construction, yes, with caution, because you need to understand your data kung valid ba na sa index na imong buhaton. No? You say wealth index of countries. Yung imong information should be related to the wealth, no? Generation of wealth. Theory building, PCA is not for theory building. Instrument validation, it's not. Regression reprocessing, yes, okay ra daw. Next steps are reduction, none. For index, you need to explain the weights and the dominant variables that you have. No? Theory building, you go to EFA. If you want to be bulletproof, especially sa mga reviewing, no? There is a certain way of saying about PCA, dili kay mo claim lang kaglahos, no? Component X was interpreted as a variance pattern associated with whatever variable that you have. This is the best way of explaining, making a claim of your principal component. So, dili. Interpreting patterns, not entities. No latent variable claim is made. So, kanitang tawag ko na nimo. I don't know why it's been repeated in the sa notes nga ako nakita. Sige nag-repeat. Maybe a lot of people are misusing PCA as for that purpose. Okay, pumon kayo mo gawas permit. Interpret components. How do you interpret PCA? Number one, examine the loadings, the maximum, how much, no? Unsa ka wide. Identify dominant variables, which variable actually is saying and affecting your component. Then assign descriptive level and make a description. Here are some, no, engineering field. So okay, pagtangtang kaning kuan siya kaning renal hospitas na niya. You have the PC label, overall system load pattern, interpretation. PC captures the dominant. So this is how you interpret, no? I'm going to point there from Morit Kustika side kay gialihan mo sa aning Zoom label. PC1 captures the dominant variable pattern associated with simultaneous increase in pressure, temperature, power consumption. Mao ni nakita sa PC label, overall system load pattern. Example, arita sa daily engineering education, overall response intensity pattern. PC1 summarizes the dominant pattern of consistently high and low responses across assessment items. These interpretations are the nunta ka ng bulletproof, wala yung magiglalis niyo. Basta insakto lang ang tanong ko, susunod na. Basta di lang itong imuon ninyo o kuwan na mo na yung mga medical theory, dili na siya mo. Okay, so economics policy, overall economic activity index. So this is how it's being explained. Okay, so I think this would be the end of the discussion. The ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary can speak, according to Hans Hoffman. So that should end my presentation. I'm not sure if I went beyond 1 hour. Sir Genesis, okay, right?
Yeah, all good, sir.
All good, Sir Randy. Thank you so much, Sir Randy. For those participants who has questions, we will entertain them later on our Q&A question portion. Okay, but if you already have questions, kindly type in our chat box. Okay, so thank you so much, Sir Randy, for that insightful and enlightening discussion about PCA. Now, building on our first lecture, we will now proceed on our second topic, which is the cluster analysis. Cluster analysis is a technique widely used to identify patterns and group data based on similarities, enabling researchers to better understand hidden structures. Our speaker is an accomplished educator, researcher, and community leader with extensive experience in education, research, and social development, currently serving as the research and environmental actor of the School of Education. With a career spanning over a decade, he has held roles in academia, research, and community engagement, including serving as an education program specialist and a data analyst. He has published in Scopus and other publications. Further, his research contributions include studies of data mining, education for sustainable development, and public health. He has presented at national and international conferences. Beyond academia, he has actively contributed to various civic and environmental initiatives, leading coral restoration and climate change education projects, and advocating for marine conservation through his hobby of underwater photography. May we now welcome our second speaker, Mr. Rex Villaveles. Sir Rex?
Okay, hello. Hello, Ma'am Chani.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Okay, sorry. Nawag lang ang window sa Zoom, sorry.
Okay, no worries, sir.
Is my audio audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Sige. Can I be allowed to share screen?
Yes, sir. You may.
Sige, for a while. I'm using Canva. Okay. Alright. Here. Okay. So, let me just share my screen. Okay. See. Alright, is the screen clear on your end?
Yes, sir.
Everyone? Okay. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Usjr CBRDS, for this session and for this opportunity. So disclaimer for our audiences in the Zoom meeting. I'm gonna be presenting the beauty and the benefits of cluster analysis. I'm gonna deal a little bit of the concept in a practical sense. I will not delve too much on the computational parts because I think that every one of us can appreciate the technicalities of the solutions, but I can present it in the PowerPoint. But this is gonna be more of a practical setup. It's going to be some sort of a workshop also, wherein after I present my slides, I'm going to open my Jamovi program and show it to the screen, and the participants can also open it in their own workstations. Okay, so I hope that would be fine. Okay, so Sir Johnsis, how do we, should we provide in the chat room, the chat box, the data set, or how do we go about it?
I already posted the dataset, Sir Rex.
Okay, good. Thank you, sir. Sige. So once you have the data set, we can, since you have the data set, we can go there later on the analysis. And I hope you already have Jamovi installed on your desktops so that you have a better appreciation of the topic. Okay. All right. So once again, I'm Sir Rex, faculty in the School of Education at your service. So let's begin on our topic of cluster analysis. Okay. So cluster analysis, I think the word will speak for itself. It's about finding similarities, finding similar groupings from a data set. Okay. Ideally, the data set must also be, how do we call this, robust. We'll talk about robustness of data later. So as you can see, identify natural groupings, which might not be obvious from just merely looking at the data points. Of course, data structures and the results can actually help us in decision making, depending on what we see at the clusters. Commonly, this is used in certain market analysis, but this can also be used in varying fields. It's not just in commerce or even in data science, but also in other disciplines as well. So just a little bit of background on why or when can we use analysis. So cluster analysis is very helpful in market segmentations. It's like trying to find certain commonalities properties or groupings of, let's say, consumers. So, for example, in terms of buying properties and real estates, cluster analysis can actually see groups. No, what are the different groups that are buying real estate? Is there a group that prefers high? How many groups prefer high end? The medium end, the lower end of the price. No? So that's actually helpful. Now you'll know now this is the usual price that people are usually, leaning towards or willing to spend in terms of real estate and buying properties. Then image recognition, no? So you can actually see how different data points look together. So whether that's clustered or medyo spread out, is actually so helpful. Social network analysis can actually be done using cluster analysis depending on data points. Okay, so there's actually a wide array of applications, no, for cluster analysis, and we'll talk later on what kind of data should we be what kind of data should be included there. Okay, all right. So cluster analysis relies on understanding similarities and partly dissimilarities among data points. Okay, so the results or the resulting clusters represent groups that have very similar characteristics. So in the analysis, you can actually tell how many groups are actually present in that data set. So one of the things that cluster analysis uses is the concept of Euclidean distance. So it's about the straight line distance between different data points, no? Between 2 points and one data from another data point, another data point. So to illustrate, it's gonna look something like this, no? So on the left, the data might seem spread out, but you can actually see para obvious groupings, no? It's actually very simple illustration. This is not actual because in order for data analysis, data mining to work, which is part C cluster analysis, you need a robust data set. So this is just a very simple illustration just for the sake of understanding. And this is very few data points. So, obvious na yun kung saan na groups are na. So using the scatter plot, you can actually see, you can actually extract rather what groups are present. Okay, so here, after using cluster analysis, you can actually see the groupings. All right, so that's a thought. No? So from there, from a certain data point, you can actually see which data points are very close to each other. So that's where the concept of Euclidean distance is useful. The other term that I want to introduce is the term centroids. So since in establishing a cluster, there must be some sort of a central point where all the other data points would actually be centered on. So to illustrate my point, it's something like this. If you can see the red, that's actually the centroid of the data set. So analysis will actually look at the data. Take note, this is data mining. This is data machine learning. I hope everybody has some sort of background in machine learning. This is not traditional statistics because it's not plainly computation. Actually, statistics is just a part, of machine learning and data mining and cluster analysis. So from there, it analyzes the trends based on a centroid and what points are very centroid, that establishes now the grouping. So if you can see the red one, the red dots on the circles, that's actually the centroid. So if you can analyze, I don't know if I can write in draw. Yeah, I can draw the eye. Sorry. So if you can see this one, if you can actually see the circle, this data point is no longer part of that cluster because it's very far from that centroid. The same thing from this data point, it is no longer part of that cluster because it's very far from the centroid. So that's actually the logic, no, on the logic of centroids and Euclidean distance. These are the two essential terms and concepts for us to better appreciate and understand cluster analysis. Okay. Are we good so far? Or am I going too fast? Okay lang ba? Understandable? Okay. Sige. So, we proceed. Okay lang. Thumbs up if you are so far learning from what are we talking about so far. Can we see some thumbs up reaction from our audience? This is actually very helpful. So we're building up on the appreciation part, not before we go to the actual computation part. Okay, sige. So after Euclidean distance, sorry, let's just delete drawings. Sorry. So essentially, commonly, there are two kinds of cluster analysis: the hierarchical and the k-means clustering. So we're gonna touch a little bit on the two, but the main character rather is gonna be the k-means cluster because it's actually the ones that gives us the most interesting results. Okay. So hierarchical clusters is actually it's actually the exploratory part of the cluster analysis. It's trying to see how many clusters would be best, but it does not. The limitation is that it does not automatically show you the clusters. You go to k-means in order for us to verify and confirm and explore the groupings based on the clusters. So if you look at it, hierarchical cluster analysis is more of a, should we say, initial step before going to k-means clustering. Okay. So, and hierarchical cluster analysis is actually can be or is good for smaller data sets. While k-means requires a more robust and a lot more data points to be effective. Okay. So k-means, here we go, distinct clusters. K meaning the number of distinct clusters. The limitation, however, is that we have to decide, or how do we say this? It's dependent on the input of the one analyzing. It asks you how many do you need? How many do you need? It does not suggest to you how many is best. But we have a way to confirm that. There's a technique that we can use to that, all thanks to our commands. So we're gonna visit a little on our commands. Don't worry, it's just very basic. It's just very easy. I can send the commands on the chat box later, so that everyone can just copy the command and run it on your own laptops or on your own work systems. Okay. So just a little bit of comparisons. Okay. So nothing new here really. It's just a overview and a comparison. So here we go. So we are now going towards the cluster analysis to connecting it to data mining. So, FYI, everyone, cluster analysis is just one of the techniques. Now, in data mining, there's so many techniques now. There's, what do you call this? Central schemas, a priori algorithms. There are so many, algorithms in data mining. So, cluster analysis is just one. So, since it's a data mining technique, one of the requirements or one of the, how do we say this, the necessities or non-negotiables in data mining is because it should be handling large data sets. So when you say large data sets, it has a lot of data points or data entries, so to speak. So just a little bit of background, some of the requirements for data mining in overall, not just in cluster analysis. When I talk about robust and large data sets, we're talking about, from what I have been trained, it should be a minimum of 500 data points. So survey data that is, so we say, does not reach 500, it's where you can say you can run, but it would not be very effective, or the result might not be very conclusive, or should we say reliable. That's a problem, no, that's a problem. Sir, can we use survey data for cluster analysis? Yes, very much you can. However, you might not be getting the ideal result. So if that's the case, then you should not resort to cluster analysis or data mining for that matter. You use descriptive statistics, inferential statistics to run analysis on data. But if you really like to run this one, so if you only have 300, then increase it to 500. Survey additional 200 people, so that you could harness the power of data mining. So the next requirement is clean data. One of the requirements for data mining is that it should not have blank entries. So when you gather data from wherever, so actually there's so many data sets right now. World Bank has so many. I can show you later. There's so many data in this age of the internet. What we just need to do is get that data and do analysis on it without having to do survey, without having to really go onto the field and get data from people and do experimentation and all this and all that. So that's good, but I'm just saying data is very much available in this day and age. All that's left for us is to analyze. Okay, so then of course we will need tools. We have a lot of tools available right now. A few years back, the most famous or the only tool that will allow us to run data analysis, data mining or machine learning is R. I think everybody's familiar with R. Then came Orange. Then recently this new freeware, Jamovie, and another one, Weka, is actually very good machine learning tools. It's actually a more user interface friendly version of R, where, well, in a sense, R has improved a little bit, in terms of user interface. But before, you really have to be the one giving it commands. It's like it's like being an IT. You really have to command the computer what it should do. There's really no click to run all of this. So now with these tools, it's now much more how should I say this, much accessible and doable, to even non-IT or non-computer graduate. And of course, a little bit of background on statistics. It helps because when you run and get the results, you have a more complementary approach to this to the analyses. I'll show that to you. I'll show an example to you later. Then, of course, contextual background on what you are analyzing or what you are interpreting for. So, if something about business, you should have a business background to make sense of the data. Not really expert background, but familiarization of what the data is, etc. So that's actually what I'm saying. Because the results are not the end all of this analysis. It requires some sort of contextual understanding. It requires some sort of how do I say this? Background knowledge in order for the results to be meaningful. So tama naman na it's cluster analysis is just a tool. The ones who make the implications, interpretations should be the researcher. Okay. So the data set, okay, a little bit of background on the data set. I hope you have it there with you. It is, this is actually, I'm sharing to you the data set that I'm working on another paper. I'm sure you're familiar with world rankings, QS, Stage E, Worry, and all that. However, currently THC has the sustainability rankings now. So, but the data set is from Green Metric. It's actually also a world ranking organization which ranks universities not on the usual academic criteria, but on its sustainability, environmental, so to be specific, environmental sustainability prowess, or should we say ability, so to speak. So the data is around 1,745 universities of the world, coming from 105 countries. So that data set that you have there is very, very good for data mining, machine learning, and of course cluster analysis, because minimum of 500 and we have 1,700 something. So okay, it's times 3 the minimum. So I hope that's clear. You can actually use a lot of data sets if you want later, but for the sake of demonstration, we will use the data set for now. And then the data set, let me just open the data set so that we will have a uniform understanding of what we're talking about. So let me just share screen, my entire screen. Okay, screen. So there we go. So okay, this is the Excel. Okay, so if you can see, there are several, should we say, criteria. No? So there's the university name, there's the ranking. So if you scroll down, it's actually 1,755. Then the continent where they belong, the country, and the specific score based on the criteria. I'm not gonna mention the scoring mechanism because that's not really relevant for this discussion. But to give you a sense of the criteria, this is the criteria. So the initials SI, EC, etc. actually means something. No? So settings and infrastructure, it's about the engineering. No? The campus has engineering. Energy conservation, green energy, climate change addressing, carbon footprint. This is EC. Waste, and managing waste, recycling waste, waste management. that's WS. Water conservation, water recycling, etc. That's under water, WR. Transportation is included, green transportation, green transport, basta anything that is related to transferring and mobilizing students in a more sustainable manner, that's under transportation. Then comes education and research, meaning the research and the education is always aligned and, should we say, anchored towards green economies, all these things, sustainable development, education for sustainable development. That's actually one of the criteria for this data set. So all in all, you get 100, and there's actually some sort of computation further to get the overalls. But the thing is, you have several criteria for this analysis. So, because basically, what we're gonna do here is, what are the different clusters of schools or universities from this ranking? And based on that, we can have some sort of idea on the general distributions of these universities. And we can also add the geographical aspects, of where they're located. So we're gonna do that later. Okay, so that's it. Then here we go. Let's now move on to our Jamovi. Okay, so I'm gonna show you my Jamovi program. Okay, alright. So I hope everybody is seeing the screen. Kita ba ang Jamovi? Okay. Alright. So in Jamovi, okay, the very first thing that we need to is load our data set into the platform. So the good thing about Jamovi is it automatically detects Excel. So I already opened it a while ago. So open. Browse. Then I'm going to use the data set that is available. Sorry, let me just close it. Okay, so there, right? So we have now the data set loaded. Okay, let me just adjust that a little bit. So we have the data set loaded, and more or less that's the first step. Okay, that's the first step. We load it. Now, just like the thing with Jamovi is it needs modules to run certain specialized analysis, and one of that is, of course, cluster analysis. So take note, there are two modules that you need to install: the snow cluster and the module RJ. It's an so we call this algorithm runner in Jamovi. So to do that, you go to modules. Okay. Kita ra mas Channing Sir Jones ang movement sa mouse.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So you go to modules, and of course we go to the Jamovi library. So let's search snow cluster. There we go. So that is the module that you need. So once that appears, install it. Okay. I purposely uninstalled this one para makita gyud ang pag-install. Okay. So now that just wait for that. Just wait for it to finish. So once that's done, you can actually see the snow cluster module on the upper menus. No? So see, it's done. So you can see the snow cluster. And when you click on that, see, it's now showing the k-means, hierarchical, time series. So we're just gonna tackle the first. Okay, so that's it. And the second one, the RJ module. So let's just search RJ. Okay, so editor is actually an editor to run our code inside Jamovi. So yeah, this is actually the amazing thing or the cool thing about this program, it allows you to run to run R in this software. Okay, so very good. Okay, so we have all the modules that we need. Okay, so right, so we have commands here. Okay, we'll go to the commands in just a few minutes. So let's begin running cluster analysis in our dataset. So again, now that we have loaded this, by the way, before we do anything, cluster analysis or k-means cluster is actually ideal for continuous data, and it's still okay for scales or ordinal data. Okay, but it's leaning towards the more numerical data. This is because it is easy to group. Well, technically, ordinal data, nominal data can actually really be automatically grouped because, of course, just simple frequency. You know that how many. So there's really no need to run cluster analysis on a categorical data. No. So it is ideal for numerical data. Okay. So let's begin. So click Snow Cluster, and let's go first to hierarchical clustering. Okay. So here you can see the interface. So of course we will just use the criterion. Do not add the total score because you don't want to cluster that, because that is coming from the computation of this criteria. Adding it will somehow confuse the analysis, so you do not need to put that in our variables. Okay, so there's actually labels here that could also help you if you have a categorical if you already have a categorical data associated with the numerical data, you can put the labels there. But for the sake of purely clustering continuous data, we will not put labels on this side or on this part. Okay, so you can see here the options. Okay, so you can actually see it by number of clusters or by two. So so here you are already deciding, but we don't want that yet. So you can just use by height. Okay. So you can actually see that from there you can see there are seven pre-identified clusters, but you can actually use further should we say confirmation by clicking on plots. Okay. You can actually go to dendrogram. Okay, just wait for that to load. Then the distance measure, just keep it there because we are more should we say interested in the Euclidean distance. That's what we are saying. And the clustering method is Ward D version 2. So okay, so do not change anything. The cluster variables, you don't need to click on that because we're not clustering the variables. We're clustering the entire variables. Because if you click that, okay, what happens is, see, it does not run. It does not run. So you just leave it there. Now let's analyze the dendrogram. So the dendrogram, initially one is telling us, if you can see the red parang should we say vertical lines, it shows you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So based on that, and the heights, 15 is the default. Just no need to check on that. No need to shuffle this. You don't need to really change that. So initially, hierarchical clusters is actually telling us we have 7 possible clusters for this data set. Okay. So that is hierarchical clustering. So when you click save, it's gonna save the cluster number. So if you can see there, you already see cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3. So the good thing about Jamovi, it's real time. It's automatically showing you the cluster derecho. So that's it. No? There's 7 clusters. So yeah. But in cluster analysis, we have what we call optimal clusters. So it does not always mean that since hierarchical clusters or clustering shows you 7, it means that is what is optimal. It is just showing us there's possible 7 possible clusters or groupings, but can be further, should we say, lowered or decreased to make it more interpretable or to improve interpretability of our clusters. Okay, so in order to do that, we now proceed to the k-means clustering. Okay, so I think that's easy enough. I think we're clear on this one. Okay, so we now move to the main character, the k-means clustering. Okay. So the k-means clustering, now we have a little bit different on the interface, so to speak. So the same thing, we load our criteria, because I forgot to mention a while ago now, in order to load or the continuous variables or even the ordinal variables, k variables, must be independent from each other. So just like in regression, collinearity should not be present. So it's like, how do I say this? The way we measure one variable must at least not be the same when we measure the other one. It must be, should we say, it must be very different. I mean, the index, the variables must be different from each other in terms of how it was measured. It's like you should not have a variable that used variable A and B to get it. No, you can, I hope you understand what I'm saying now. Usually to get a data, we divide or we add variable A and multiply or divide it by the variable B, etc. So it should not be like that. There must be the variables must be very, very different from each other. So that is what is, of course, that is what is happening right now in our data set. So we click on the criteria, we move on to the covariates. Okay, so in the algorithm, we fix on Hartigan and Wong. Okay, that's what that is the default. You can just use that. Now we have to click on the standardized variables because sometimes our variables might be very due to its very different in nature. We must be able to standardize them. Now each variable, we convert it into a standardized value so that from -1 to 1, -1 to +1, so that the clustering will be more effective. Because, like for example, if one variable is a maximum of 1,000, so you have a very wide variability in that data set and that variable, then the other variable A is only a maximum of 100 points. So from 100 to 1,000, it's a very big disparity. So we have to standardize that one. And the power of Jamovi is actually it can automatically do that for us. So standardized variables. So we already standardized our variables inside the system. So that's good. No. Now we do not here the number of random variables, starting variables. You don't need to change the 10, but we can possibly change the 2. So here, plots can actually, this is actually very helpful because you can actually plot the optimal number of clusters. So it's going to show you some sort of graphical interpret a graphical representation of the clusters. You just need to siguro wait a little because it's 1,700 data points. It takes a while for the software to process. So hopefully it's making sense to you. Let's just wait. Okay. Then you can there we go. So according to this one, optimal clusters is 5, but hierarchical told us that it's possible 7. So there we go. Instead of just saying 7, instead of saying 7, okay, pero pwede ay 5 they are possible optimal clusters. Okay, so let's hold on to that. You can actually check the screen plot. Okay, there we go. The part where you can actually look at the part where the how do you call this? Going down 1, 2, 3. The lowest, you should not go very low. So actually we are safe on the 1, 2, 3, 4, and a little bit on the 5 according to this one. So medyo we're leaning towards 5, but that's not yet final. You can actually see the plots of the clusters. See, you can actually see there, but that's 2 because we set here 2, so let's not work on that one. So cluster plot. So see, you can actually see what the clusters are 1 and 2. So let's try to see if we are seeing good clusters using 5. So it's gonna change. So the good thing in Jamovi is it's actually changing automatically. So for the goer's distance, no need to click anything here because this is just an additional what you call this graphical result. So we're still on the process of confirming everyone if the 5 is really our ideal clusters. Okay. So see, just wait for it because this is the thing about the machine learning. It's also very dependent on the power of your machine. Okay. So according to this one, so see, this is now the clustering of the 5 data sets. And then we can actually confirm if 5 is our optimal clusters. Okay, so to do that, let's go to our editor. There we go. Okay, so it's gonna give us an R editor window. So using the commands that I have presented here, I will just copy that one and I will share it in the share window. Oh, sorry. I will share this text in the chat box so that you can just copy. Okay, where's the Zoom? There we go. Okay. So you can copy. No, let's go through these commands one by one. So okay, so again, these commands are helpful for us to check the optimum number of clusters for our cluster analysis. Okay. So let me go back to Jamovi. Okay. So the first command is this one. So this command is a short command on the cluster hierarchical clusters, but it's more of computational rather than just simply visual. Okay, so it's gonna run ward2 and tell us how many heights or the ideal heights. So height is like, how do we call this? The significant how do we call this? Think of it this way: height is, should we say, the how big we should look in terms of clustering. So if you can see the dendrogram, Okay, if you can see the dendrogram, so we want heights there because that is where most of the clusters are located. No? So if you can see height 20, so medyo taas-taas. So when we go to 15, so we have a bit lower, so we can actually capture a lot of the clusters. So based on the dendrogram, so there's 1, 2, the tall ones, think of it as buildings. No? So there's a tall building here, 2, another tall building, 3, another tall building, another tall building, 4, and another another big building here. But if you go lower, there's another tall building, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yeah, if you can see that, I don't know if you can see it. So this one ba? So there's a tall building, there's a tall building, like that. No? So that's what I mean by heights, just to give you a sort of analogy. So another tall building there, but if we move a little bit lower, so there's another tall building, there's another tall building. So there we go. So we have roughly around 5 ideal clusters there, out of it of 7. But ideally, we have to look at the most optimal clusters so that we can have a better interpretability of our results. Okay? So there we go. Okay, so let's delete the drawings. Makita na ang drawings, Sir Jose. Claro na?
Makita ra, sir.
Okay, so at least it gets to sa height. Okay, basta the audience would say, what's height? What does it mean by height? What is height? So let's clear all the drawings. So we have copied the first command. Okay, so let's try to run it. Okay. Alright, so let's run it. Okay. Oh wait, there's a bit of an error on my end. Wait lang. For a while, I'll just open my notepad na lang. Okay, so let's try this one. We just delete the command. Okay, I think that's what causing the error. Ooh, okay, wait. For a while, we just okay, stop share sa akong kadali. Okay. I'll just copy the commands kadali guys ha. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we just share again. Okay, so this is the one. This is the command. So it must be that this first 2 should be on this third row, and this command should be on the 4th row. So it's important because if you run it a little bit differently, it's not gonna give you what you need. Let me just delete this result. Okay, so going back to our editor, so you can copy the command there. So make sure that it is here and this one is here. The ward2 is on the 3rd column and the HC height is on this column. So when you run it, so see, it's gonna give you a list of distances from point 1 up to the 1745th. So that's actually the power of this analysis. Of if we can just look at here, so this is our result. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So from there, you already have an idea on the distances, but we have to do something else for this data set, for these distances. So we run another command, so enter, so it shows the 5th column. Then you need to run another command, going back to this one, tail height, and the differences of the tail height at 20. So we're gonna go up a little bit to 20. Okay, so it's gonna give us the 20 differences of the 20 the height that is under 20. Okay, so you can just run it. There we go. So if you can see that, there's now another entry here. Okay, so there's now another entry, right? So let us not, should we say, so we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18. Okay, 20 distances. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20. Oh, so we have here the top 20 distances from there. So we have now an idea on the distances of the 20 heights, okay, of the 20 initial clusters. So we now run the last one, and let's limit it to say a height of only 15. So what we're doing is actually confirming and checking the optimal number of clusters. We run till 15. Okay, there we go. So this is what we need. Okay, so we are now trying to check tail 15, no, the number of 15 possible maximum clusters. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, this is now actually what we need. Okay, so the logic here, ladies and gentlemen, is towards the end, this is now actually confirming if there's only one cluster. So let me just annotate drawing ta ginagawa. So the logic ani here, guys, is reverse. No? So that is telling us cluster 1 bani, cluster 2, cluster 3, cluster 4, cluster 5, cluster 5. This is 6, this is 7, this is, think of it as the buildings. This is building 1, or cluster 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. So what is the logic? So if you can actually look at the buildings, so the values nila are not very different. So 5,800, 6,500. So okay, so you don't. This is not the ideal cluster because these are. It tells us that they are very similar. So this is not your ideal cluster. So this is 8, 9, so forth and so on. So division. Okay, this is very close to each other. So this is not your ideal cluster. This is the ideal cluster. 9 clusters ipon, 8 clusters ipon because it's very close to each other. Now here, medyo ni saka na gamay. No? It's already 13,000. Nandala siya sa 13,000. So, but it is not yet your best cluster because when you look at 6, 13,000 to 17,000 is still a bit close. So this is not your ideal clusters yet. It's not your best cluster. So it's not 7, it's not 6. When we go to 5, it's not yet your ideal because 6, 7, 6, and 8, 7, 6, and 5 is still in the 17,000. Now, when we go to the 4th cluster, okay, this is interesting because isaka na, it's practically times 2. But when you look at cluster 3, medyo a little bit of difference on 15,000 difference. So in essence, everybody, so this is where you can actually determine that your how do you call this, minimum number of good clusters should be 4. Okay, I'm making sense. Sorry. So it tells you now that the number of clusters not 6, not 7. But we can still confirm, okay? Because we should look at the end. No? We should look at the end of this series of buildings or heights. But if you can look at the last digit, it's 131,000. So it means it is too expensive or it is too big. So it's like it's saying you should not your data does not have a single cluster, meaning they're very different. So if it's very big, it means it's so expensive to merge them together. So you look at the next number, which is 52, this one. So it's not telling you that your cluster 2 might be your best optimal cluster. Sir, why not 3, why not 4? Because their distances are still very much close to each other. So the role in cluster analysis is it's not about how many. Certainly, any clusters? No, it's not. It's about finding your most optimal clusters. So saying here, 4 is good, 3 is better, but 2 is optimal. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Okay? So, again, 4 is good, 3 is better, 2 is your optimal clusters. You make sense? So, we can now actually test this in our cluster, K-means cluster balik sa ato ang Jamovi. Okay, so now that we have run this, we have now the confidence na, okay, so naraday ko sa 4. So we can now explore, no? So we can now do a little bit of exploring in the data. So we go back to our small cluster. Let's go back here. Okay. The good thing about Jamovi is when you click on the result, it's gonna automatically get you back to where you were, the window where you were running the analysis. Now, so what was the ideal number? 4, no? Or minimum 4. Okay, so let's go to 4. So it's gonna give you now. So just before it's just show the screen plot. Okay. So just give it time. So let's see if we can find 4. Let's see what the results, what 4 clusters would tell us. Okay, so there we go. No, so these are the clusters, no, of the 1,745 data points. So there's 4. Okay. Okay. So let's see the plots. Okay. So there we go. So if you can see here, we see that there are 4 clusters, meaning we have a very low cluster, a second lowest cluster, a third higher cluster, and the highest cluster. So it's saying to us that the universities are somewhat grouped into 4 levels of what you call this, into 4 levels of categorization, or 4 groups. So here you can actually do save cluster number, because it's gonna give you a new data or a new input for the clustering. So then I assignment. So it's like this university is in cluster 2, cluster 2, cluster 2, etc. There you go. All right. So we can actually do some sort of analysis, and a little bit of statistical analysis. We can run chi-square, go to frequencies, independent samples. We can let's see if you want to see continents rows and our clustering 2 on columns. So there we go. No? So this is now your distribution. We have 348 universities in cluster 1, 409 in cluster 2. So on something 1, 2, 3, 4. So the best cluster, or the highest, or the most high highly ranked sustainable institutions is found in cluster 2. Diba? So technically cluster 1, 2, 3, 4 does not indicate that they are the good. 1 means good, 2, 4 is the lowest. So 2 is considered to be the best university clusters, followed by the green, cluster 4, followed by the orange yellow, which is cluster 3, and followed by the blue, which is technically the lowest rank in the cluster. So when you go back in the chi-square, so there we go. So you now know how many universities from each continent are found in those clusters. So see, but this is 4 clusters. So according to our test in the move in the R modules, 2 might be your optimal. 2 might be your best. So let's try to go back to our cluster analysis again. Same thing naman siya before, 2. So let's change the number of clusters to 2. Okay. So just wait for it. Okay. I think if you have a much more powerful device, or mas if a gaming laptop or actually PC, mas siguro more ang cluster. Okay, there we go. So according to this one, there is actually 2 optimal groups or 2 optimal clusters based on our optimal clustering result. So we have here very good institutions, and we have the not so good institutions. Compared to the 4 na medyo natin-leveling, pwede na put to. But it's just saying, since you are saying na naman level 2, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, so it tells you there's really 2 generic categorizations. The very good ones, the good ones, and the not really good ones. So we can see that there are 2 generic clusters, the center and the solver of the center. And we can run again our chi-square, independent samples. We can go to the so, and look at the p-value, so medyo significantly hapon siya. So it's now saying na you can actually look at here how many universities from these continents belong to the very good and the not so good clusters. They're still good, no, because they're ranked, but in the ranking, di ba, na-enjoy mo rin pinaka-nindot o and the not so high. So when you look at the plots, so the best DI is cluster 2. The highly rated or a very good performing sustainability, so the most sustainable universities are in cluster 2, and the not so high in the ranking is in cluster 1. So we have here. So should we say continents do the clusters 1 and 2 have in terms of the number of universities? So in Africa, cluster 2 may nindot, no? So in Europe, medyo twice, no? So 228 out of 432. Asia, 567 versus 494. Latin America, okay. So medyo equal lang man, pero it shows you that most of the universities coming from Asia and Europe are actually very high in the rankings, no? So that's what telling us. That's what it's telling us. We can actually explore further. Going back, let's use this again. Instead of continent, let's use countries. Where's my country data? Country, okay. Wait, let me just adjust the country. Country should be nominal. Okay. Sorry, I need to adjust my data para mo masuod siya sa chi-square. So, country, there we go. So, see, medyo dagan siya. But you can actually get an idea of country level analysis of, let's look at the Philippines, 47 to 42. Okay, so na yung mga very sustainable na pwede kaayo. But here, look for India, it's 45 out of 15. So here, you can now get more insight. Italy, 28 out of 5. So see here, you can actually now see how these countries play out. So we have an individual country analysis and we have a continent level analysis. So that's where you now can write your interpretation, your implications, etc. in terms of countries. Chinese Taipei, it's 2744. So I'm not sure if you see that. So 27 out of 4. Dakan kayo sa mga Southeast Asia, naasa top. Philippines, medyo naasa sakto-sakto lang. 47, nasa high cluster, 42 at lower cluster. Yeah, so this is now where you can, Brazil, sakto lang. 30-30. 30 universities are in cluster 2, 30 universities are in cluster 1. Turkey, so see. So ang pinakadaghan, the most number of countries in the ranking is found, is from Indonesia, and 196 is from Indonesia. Expected siya, everybody, because the green metric system or the UI green metric system is actually piloted and spearheaded by Universitas UGM, Universitas Gadjah Mada in Indonesia. So, well, of course, home court advantage. So, daghang universities dito ang ni-appeal. For the Philippines, there are only 89 universities that have submitted themselves for ranking. I'm not sure if ni-appeal ang Usjr ani charot. But yun is nag-worry man ta, no, sir? Sir Johnsis o PhD na ta. So yeah, so green metric, the UI green metric can actually be a good ranking, an additional ranking for the university if the university decides to go into it. So yes, this is the power of cluster analysis. No? So it tells you how many clusters, and from there you can actually look into it more deeply. Where are they coming from? So it's good na aside from your continuous variable, na po certain categorical variable, not for the running of the cluster analysis, but for the purpose of the contingency tables, that identifying which categories fall on cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3, etc. So there you go. So that's the beauty of cluster analysis. Okay, so I think that would be all for my talk on cluster analysis. Hopefully, though it's short, you got some sort of insights and siguro ideas on what data you could run using this data mining technique. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. If there are questions, maybe you can later. So that's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Vidyavelas, for sharing your valuable knowledge with us and for taking time in performing the cluster analysis in GeMovie. But before we go to our Q&A, Sir Randy Salazar will be performing GeMovie using the PCA. We'll be performing the PCA using the GeMovie software. Sir Randy?
Yes, siya. Story kanina nakalimot ko. I'll just show you how it it looks like on the Jamovie. Pwede sa suggest, no? Pero Jamovie ako prepare. Yeah, to show you how the PCA on the Jamovie looks like, it would be something like this. How to go. This is the data set that gigamit ito financial health data set. You have here the 10 data set, and then you have the variables. When you load your data set, make sure that these headings, the titles or the heading of your Excel is loaded on the top. Because when I load this, the headings are somehow placed on row 1. Nakalimot ko kung saan ito siya pagbutang RSS pabaw pa. But what I did is I just simply copy this to the heading by clicking. If you click, sige po click. Yeah, this one. If it happens na there is a 1 di butang, copy this and then place it sa ibabaw. Okay? So, those things would not be your headings. And first row where you have this data na nabutang na rin, you can just delete, no? You say click, delete the row, okay? So if you are happy with that, okay na. It should look like this, no? And then it should tell you that these numbers, the numbers you have are all numeric. The ruler means is a continuous unit. Kaya doon naman yung nominal, click, double click. Naman ko na siya na continuous, nasa nominal, ordinal, and ID. So it has to be continuous. Okay. Auto, yan ang i-detect as continuous kay number 1. The numbers are here are actually in decimal place. So once you have those things, you can just on factor analysis, factor, and then principal component. Since naka-click naman ko sa principal component direct, I'll just show you directly. So all of these came from the Regica. I think you know how to load. So I'm going to load this again, balik. And I think what is convenient with Jamovie and Jazz. You do not need to physically, you just have to remove it from this set of variables. And here is the KMO measure sampling efficacy. It will show you the following values: 0.753, 0.835. If I remember right, what I said is the least value should be 0.6 is acceptable. Anything less should be, you just remove them because they have no correlative correlation sa ubang account, wala sila i-relation. So here you have 7 and 8. Ang pinakamupo is 0.7, so deduction na po. So Bartlett's test of sphericity, it says it's 0.1 significant. So we have a okay nga data, good nga data. And here is what we are talking about a while ago, rotation, Varimax. If I'm going to place this as based on parallel analysis, that means to say on its own, I can do Varimax, simply max, obli mean. It will find its own way kung asa ang atong component na it says only one is needed. So I'll go back to Varimax, it does not change the data anyway. So meaning to say, PC1 can actually describe or can get all the variations of data in one PC, no? Basta lang ka PC. Pero if you have this, what does it mean to have, also may meaning anin niya kung yung PC1 captures all the data that you have with the variable. What do you think would be the interpretive label for PC1? Mga financial student, kung ang interest coverage, net margin, ROA, quick ratio, everything falls into one component. What do you think would be the best interpretive label na rin yun? While you're thinking, I'll try to show you how I get my tree. No? If I'm going to click on the fix, and then I'm going to have 3, Then I have the 3 kanina. That's what we have a while ago. According to the explanation, the first component is financial strength. The other one is capital structure or operating performance. The other one is profitability and efficiency. And I have not explained, I don't know the negative there is. So, ang sabihin negative. It says that this value is debt to equity ratio and it's a very strong effect on number 2. So, wala kayo sa gi-appeal o explain kanina, no? What does it mean to have negative? If you look at debt to equity ratio, it means to say, atong exponent atong dili exponent kaning value above ang debt sa ibabaw ang equity sa ubos, no? Meaning debt to is to equity. Kung ang akong debt is bigger, then my ratio becomes bigger. Is that correct? Kung ang debt na ko is small, ang akong equity, i-retain na natin equity, ang debt na ko is small, then it will come up with a very small value ang akong ratio. Let's say 1:4, 1/4, meaning to say, my equity has 4 times amount than my debt. So 1/4 na sa akong equity is my debt, utang na ko palit. Pero kung akong i-4:4 o 1:1, meaning to say I have an equal value of debt and equity. So what does it mean to have a bigger debt to equity ratio diri sa atong component 2? It means the bigger the debt, my number 2 component becomes ang iyang index 4 becomes lower. If I have less debt, negative man ang iyang loading, I have a much stronger PC2. Ano saan itong PC2 dire? PC2 is capital structure operating performance. So my performance will become smaller if my debt becomes bigger. Is that correct? Sakto ba pag-explain? So if that is the case, then I would prefer to have less debt kay my performance would be much more stronger. This is the negative effect sa loading. These are called loadings. How do you know what is the effect of the loading on your variable component 2? The idea is you have to multiply this on itself, meaning get the square. Example, 0.8 times 0.8, that will give you 64.64. It means that it has a 6.4% effect on your variable. So 6.4%. Or 64%. Sakto ba? Sir, sakto ba kung mga calculation? Kaya ang 0.3, kung akong i-multiply ang 0.3 on itself, that should be 9%. Sir Daya? 0.3 times 0.3, that will be 0.09. Yeah, 0.09. So in terms of that would be 9%. So kung ang 0.8 times 0.8, that would be 60. So I have a 6.60 ba o 6? Or say po kung 60%. Sakto akong calculation. 60% ang yung effect to your variable. This one has 60% effect to your principal component 1. Whenever this change, it will have a 60% effect to the component, to the variable component 1. Muna yung pasabot tayo. Sir, what would be the limit of acceptability of these numbers? 0.3 is the minimum. Anything less, wala na siya effect kayo sa imong variable. Pero ang dominant ni mo is lang to. Again, the debt to equity ratio value will have a negative 60% effect to your principal component. If this is your performance, it will reduce drastically your operational performance. Agree, disagree? I may have mentally calculated wrong values. So, a while ago we said that we have to have, we reduce the structure to simple one structure, one value, no? Pinaka-usa lang ang pinaka-list. And it will show you that there is only one need of one component because all of this value is correlated to a certain idea. And if I have all of these in one bunch of variable, then what can you call this? Wala kayo mo suggest sa audience? Sige, ako na lang tubag. It means all of this data is referring to the financial health of your corporation. You may call this PC1 as a singular variable is as your financial health index. It means it tells about your corporation whether you are on a very good condition financially. Your debt to equity have a very strong effect to your one. That would be something like 81%. I'm not sure if that's correctly done. 81%, meaning it affects your financial health index. The bigger the debt means, say, I would have a lower health index. No? If I have a less debt, then I will have a much healthier health index. The rest are all positive, so the bigger the value, then you have a more healthy index. This is what it means to have all of them together. Sometimes it's interesting to know, sir, should I have one component? Should I have three? Though a while ago we see that if I have three, I have different interpretation. Financial strength, operating performance, and I have profitability efficiency. Sir, dili din siya makuha because number 3 only operates on certain variable, dominant variable. The second component operates on a certain dominant variable which actually refers to this. Which one is more interesting to make a paper on? 3 components, singular component. I think it really depends on how you're going to interpret and explain yourself on these things. No? Ang pinaka-the best na can I defend my claim? If you go back again to the loadings, you have to go back to these loadings. No? Why would you say this much? Because I have this much loading. How much effect does this variable to my claim? Say in effect, then you go back to the amount of loading that you have. You cannot say absolutely nga maayo gini siya kay the loading does not tell you 100%. It only tells you a certain percentage effect. So your claim could also be limited to the amount of claims or loading that you can say. So should I have 3? Depende sa imong trend kung sa imong gustong i-explain. That's why sometimes in your research, you really have to define your intention. What exactly do you want to show? And if you want to show profitability, then might as well have to show the number 3 because number 3 actually tells you about your profitability direction for this company, for this kind of data set. No? If you like to know your financial health of a certain corporation, then might as well show the whole thing as a singular component because it shows how healthy is your corporation. This particular, probably, I'm not sure if the data came from different corporation or geographical location. Let's say Cebu City ni Tanan. And then I would say that the financial health of this corporation in Cebu City is very good. Because if you notice these values tells you that they have a very good, strong funds. For the individual port, you may have to need to find several sets of data, let's say, not just 1 year, probably a series of years along the way, 10 years of data set. Then you can tell about the financial index or health index of your corporation in the 10 years it operated. Okay? So it may be interpreted in that direction. So yeah, there's a certain direction the PCA is asking. You go for singular, simple structure. But if you want to explain also some of the other aspect, I will go for 3 if I like to explain something else. No? Most interesting for me is the number 3 because it shows you the structure of your data, how it actually tell about the corporation. Again, depends on the intention of your research. Again, do not claim this as an abstract because this is a interpretive or descriptive way of looking at things, not is necessarily the conceptual analysis or conceptual aspect. This is where you find the rotation. If I use only one, everything else, even if I use off-limit, it will just give you same amount. Meaning to say, your PCA has found the max. So, really not necessary to go around and look for another one. Okay? Any questions or any reactions? I have explained the chemo, di ba no? If this one has a bad, not very good acceptable value, then you remove that value because it has not a very good correlationship or correlated to all the rest of the you want to find out. Really siya ito nga pala significant to the whole thing. So, I think that's the demonstration that I would like to show to Misha.
Okay, thank you, Sir Randy, for showing us how to perform PCA using GeoMovie. So now we come to the interactive part of our program, the Q&A session. So participants who have questions or clarifications, you may type your questions in the chat box, or if you'd like to throw it personally to our speakers, then kindly raise the hand feature or react so that we can recognize you. So anyone? The floor is now open. We already have our speakers here, Sir Randy and Sir Villaveles. And also Sir Jonas is for the university's data analyst. Any questions? Anyone? Or any clarifications on how to perform PCA and cluster analysis using GeoMovie?
Hello, Ma'am Cha.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so can I ask the question?
Go, sir.
Okay, so again, this question is intended for the two speakers, Engineer Randy Salazar and Mr. Rex Villaviles. So the two topics, or the two presented data analysis tools are all unsupervised machine learning, the principal component analysis and the cluster analysis. My question here is how these two analysis tools could complement to each other to come up with a more publishable paper.
What do you mean by complement each other, the PCA and the cluster?
Yeah, the PCA and the cluster. How could these two, or how could the two tools could complement to each other to come up with a more cohesive results?
If the idea is create a publishable paper, the PCA alone can already make its own can stand on its own and be published. If you like to do that, no? I think what is critical to the creating of the paper is that the question of what did you present? Do you have a very good knowledge, new knowledge that you can add to the publication, to the knowledge that you have already on the internet or on the public, on the journal? So, something like this, if I can find, if I discover or if I found a PCA that is unique in itself and can explain something, the critical part is on the interpretation and your defensibility of your explanation. Ma-defend na niyo mo tarong, and then you can show to the journal or whoever that your idea is unique and good for publication. Even if it is only the PCA alone, it will actually be published. What is actually needed is the knowledge that you can present to anyone. For financial something like this, I believe that there are so many financial studies, and I may not be able to say unique ni akong ipakita. There may have been already several of these, and that's now the role of your RRL, why you need to check whether you're repeating the same stories, the same topic, or the same idea na gibuhat na rin sa una. If you take it on a general sense, another aspect of this is if there is any particular corporation or establishment that you need to find out or you need to show that this corporation is unique. Every time you have a different company, it actually presents a unique possibility of showing to whoever that this company runs on a very different way of doing things. And you can show evidences of how they run because you can show them the financial aspect, the whatever, no? And in the course of your PCA, you will find this is how they run, this is how they are able to be strong in Cebu City. This is how they become successful. And if you can link that idea to the component that you found in your study, I think that would be a very good idea for publication. Because again, case studies or any corporation may not be, kanabang dili ba siya exactly known to everyone? Like mga success stories, how did success stories came about? If you can provide evidences why these corporations have success stories, and I think that will become very interesting enough for people to know and your paper to be published. For me, it does not really matter kung unsang methods yung gigamit, and if in the end you are just telling the same story all over again with all the rest of the general idea, it's not really that very interesting. Anong manaw sa high dili ma-publish kay we are repeating the same things. There has to be a unique way of making a story, connect the result to the actual event or the actual realities. No? Example, si Elon Musk, known to be very rich and have a very good way of running things. If you have an idea how he runs things internally, if you have an access to those information, for sure a lot of people would like to know how does he run his financial aspect, his operational whatever. Because mura man siya phenomenon good nga ang iyang rise, no? Very strong, very big, and not just big, no, really siya na ba yung pinaka-richest karon? So it's interesting to know how he actually make his how he operates his own corporation or his own company, mga financial aspects. So, bisan pag imo pa na siyang i-cluster lang iyang storya, bisan pag imo pa nang pinaka-simple lang statistical means, if the result is very interesting and eye-opening, people will publish those things kay this is what we need. No? Can I replicate what he's doing? That's one of the main things probably nga come out. Pwede ba na ako na i-repeat iyang gibuhat? So, kaya mo tag-Elon Musk diri sa Cebu. Basi si Dayang gusto mag-Elon Musk. No? I hope you get what I'm trying to say. No? For me, the publication aspect is more of the story that you can make, and then the defense or the evidence that you can present. Is that okay, Sir Dayak?
Yeah, I agree. And I would like to hear also the response of Sir Rex on how these two tools could complement to each other.
Hello, sir. Yeah. So siguro sa reality is they might actually actual define significant variables of a data set. We go to that. It's an equal numbers to determine this purpose that should come to it. Once I-establish na siya, kasi ay kung siya ang purpose that should together, then we can now cluster the different variables that we can determine as AS to then perform a variable model. Cluster sa mga common groups that exist in a very specific variable. Variable sa class. Kaya sir, that's what I see as a potential way na complement na to ang PCA. Paula, PCA can come first doing dimensionality reductions. Then, i-cluster din na to to see if there are commonalities, there are certain groupings that exist within that variable. That's for me, sir.
Thank you, Sir Rex, because definitely the rationale why I combine these two models is that they complement each other. Because in the analysis too, it was started with the PC because of too many dimensions, so that we could able to reduce those dimensions, and then based on the results, we can use it for another extension of the result. No, that's for example cluster analysis. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
right, sir.
Thank you, Sir Rex.
All right, thank you. Any more questions from the participants? Okay, Mr. Albert Elguera.
Yes, Miss Sevilla, thank you very much for acknowledging. So yes, Sir Rex and Sir Salazar, thank you very much for a very cohesive discussion of PCA and the CA, the cluster analysis. So yeah, my question just though is, if you're going to use these tools, what are your data gathering options? Is it only like the survey or questionnaire, or can you also like utilize secondary data like reviews, studies, use cases, or what are the most common data gathering options you can use, either primary or secondary, for you to be able to use these tools?
Go ahead, Sir Andy.
Kaning cluster analysis ug ang PCA often may published and validated data. In the end, you're going to interpret. Oftentimes, they are used in data mining. When you try to explore if there are some things that you can find in all the data that has been posted in the internet or by UN or whoever has the data set. You make an analysis, pwede rin secondary data ni oftentimes. But if your study is going to be social and you like to be more on the primary side, pwede sana siyang primary side. but then you have to ask questions, you make your own, and you have to establish your own concept kung asa pa doon ang imong pangutana, kung sa imong gustong ipangutana, no? Asa pa doon ang akong gustong isolve. You can do that, but then cluster analysis, for example, may require several more data. For my own sa PCA, there is a ratio that rin ipakita which one is acceptable. But then, in the aspect of asking questions, general public information, you may need a lot more data. Pwede na mo buhaton. And then, what do you get out of that? More or less on the social trends, their own driving, let's say, decision-making sa mga people, let's say, voting. How does people vote? No? What drives people to vote a certain person? That can be very well be surveyed. Pwede hindi mo i-survey, pwede hindi mo i-PCA. Define exactly the way people think and people decide. No? Pwede hindi mo gamit ang PCA. In the cluster analysis, because we have done cluster analysis before with Rex, with Dr. Padua, and this is one of the things that we were asked initially, and what we did was data mining, meaning to say we gather information from published information and we cluster them together and find out what exactly the behind the scenarios in all of these, let's say, countries, universities, what makes them tick, and then tanaw mo sa imong cluster, no? If top universities cluster together, there must have been certain characteristics that makes them bigger or top universities. So, pwede na siya na ang study. Pwede ra data mining, pwede sa doog secondary, pwede ra sa doog doon na kahit primary data. Although primary data may take longer because you need to survey around.
Okay. Sir, just a follow-up question with that because just to share, I'm currently taking my Master's in Business Administration. Then I'm doing my thesis 1 right now. My studies, I would like to compare, have a comparative assessment of the digital service quality of the 6 digital banks in the Philippines. Then I'm going to use the ES-QuAL model of Parasuraman with 4 dimensions. Then they were able to come up with 4 dimensions using PCA. So at first, yung akong one, sir, my draft was, my intent for that is to use the reviews sa Google Play Store, and yung mga app stores so that I can get the sentiments of the users of the 6 digital banks like Maya, GoTime. And technically, when I consulted Sir Dayat and my advisor, Sir Narvaez, actually Sir Dayat mentioned that there might be challenges with that because I believe if you're going to use like secondary data, it should be converted, or it should have like a quantitative quantitative equivalent, yes, like mga scores, so that you can be able to run it, or it will have a strong framework or baseline. So technically, sir, for that one though, like right now, I have decided that I will just follow the primary data gathering. So I will be creating my own survey based on the ES-QuAL model with 22 items based on the 4 dimensions as mentioned in the ES-QuAL model framework or study of Parasuraman. But initially, if I would like to test again, maybe a few years from now, and if I would like to proceed with my doctoral, can I use the secondary data to compare the initial phase or the results of my study that I will take by this time?
For the doctoral studies, there is a level of understanding that if I'm going to be doing that, you have to elevate your concepts to more of the theoretical development. Moving into sa doctoral. Based on your old study, kung doon na result, doon na nahuman na to siya, and you like to follow up for the doctoral, then I suggest you go for the theory development of what had happened of this, and probably you can make an initial validation of the previous study. If 3 years from now they are still the same, dili sa nato kadto kay basinog mo angkor ka sa imong previous study, which may not be true anymore on the after 3 years, after 2 years. You need not to evaluate to make sure that you are anchoring your theory on. So, ay ka sa doctoral, I would advise nga go to the level of the theory development. Not necessarily that do not repeat what you have done in the thesis once sa imong masteral.
I see. Because actually, sir, with my current study right now, like the final output of it is I'm going to make like also a theory-based framework. I call that STRADISET, or strategic digital service excellence framework. So whatever will be the results of my study on those 4 dimensions with the 6 digital banks, I'm planning to create like a framework, like the banks, even traditional banks offering mobile banking applications to use on how they can be able to improve their mobile apps, like in terms of user interface, security, privacy, frameworks like that.
So, ongoing pa nang imo ang kuan imo study karon. You're
Yes,
still
chapter 1 pa.
yeah, I think you're still going to do. Wa man siguro yung problema. What I'm trying to say is that I think kanina to kanang notion mo good sa when you go to the doctoral, you have to be, let's say, doctor on the philosophy. What kind of philosophy are you presenting? Are you trying to pose on new ones, no? So most likely, you would still anchor on your own existing study karon. Use it to propel the next level of your proposal.
Okay.
After which you can already create a certain idea how this works. Because of that, how does this? What is the principle behind successes, acceptance? Depending on the type of data that you actually gather today, hindi mo i-validate ang imong i-present ang iyang concept, no? If there are improvements na nahitabo, how did it work and what makes it working improvements? Validation is necessary because, again, the idea that you have today may not be the same idea later on. You need to check, no? Okay. You may have anchored on a wrong concept na dili work anytime. It works today, but may not be working the next system. What you can do is finally say, this is how it works, and this is the concept, the reason why it's actually, can I make it continuous or is only up to this point? Kind of idea. But I think I don't know what the problem if you want to continue with that.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Si Daya mo doon na kasi kay siya naman yung nag-teach yung doctoral ba. And Ma'am Jess.
Ma'am Jess is at a meeting. Ma'am Jess is in a meeting.
Okay, nag-meeting na siya. Sir Daya.
Sir John is here, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Iya ba lang i-proceed o doctoral?
Yeah. It can be as long as there is a theory, no? So that's the requirement in the doctoral is you have generated a theory. You can develop your theory.
Philosophy.
So if you can develop your theory, then that's a good indicator. But for the master level, the minimum requirement there is to confirm the theory, no? Or validation of the theory.
Okay, thank you. That's noted.
Okay, we will entertain one more question from the participants due to time constraints. So, any more questions? Okay, anyone? Going once, going twice. Okay, so
Mm.
Thank you, Ma'am Cha. Good morning, everyone. As we conclude this webinar, we hope that the topics presented today will be beneficial to your research endeavors, particularly for the graduate students, wherein publication is one of the graduation requirements. So learning these data analysis tools can help strengthen and clarify your research direction, especially for those who are in their thesis one or still looking at their research direction. So this is really intended for you, and I hope those tools being presented will be used, no, for your research endeavors. So we hope you will apply what you learned today in your future studies, and we look forward to having you join our upcoming lecture series. So with the upcoming lecture series, that's a good tool, no, particularly on the supervised machine learning, that can definitely help, particularly for the chapter 3, no, in your proposed output, how you can able to come up with that proposed recommendation based on your results. So definitely that's another tool, that's a recent tool that you can use in your studies. Hopefully you can join for that next session. So thank you and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Thank you.
Thank you, request everyone to accomplish the evaluation form. So kindly scan that your code. Your feedback is highly valuable and will help us improve further sessions for the next series. So please make sure to complete the evaluation form as it will also serve as part of the requirements for the students of the certificate of attendance. Again, once again, thank you to our speakers, Sir Salazar and Sir Rex, and to our participants for making today's session engaging and successful. On behalf of the CRDS team, thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for joining this event.